Hello, everybody. My name is James Ponti, and it is an honor to be here today. I am the author of several middle grade series, Frame series, Dead City series, and currently writing the City Spies series. And I am the envy of over 1,000 people. I get to be the one to ask Shannon Messenger questions about Stellarlune and the newest book in the Keeper of the Lost City series that came out this week. So it's an honor for me, not only because as a writer, it's really fun, but Shannon's a friend and I'm also a fan. So it's kind of all in one. So let me please introduce to you the one, the only Shannon Messenger. Hello there, Shannon.
Hello, James. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's so fun to see you again. I haven't actually seen you, I think, since that random time we met up in Orlando and got to have kind of brunch together, and it was just so much fun.
Hung out at a bookstore, all the things that we would do. And no, it's been a while, but certainly, you know, that was right before COVID. That was actually, I think that was right before 8.5 came out. Before, you know, so yeah. It's been a while, and I'm just really excited to be here. And to get a chance to give everyone a peek into you, into what I know about you and what I don't know about you. I'm sure we'll discover tonight. But you know, I have to do, there's certain housekeeping I have to do. I have to remind everybody that, you know, I know you're excited about your books and your swag and all like that. Don't worry, it's coming. I promise it's coming. Barnes & Noble has promised it's coming. That's all going to be sent out, and you'll get it within 8 to 10 business days, which I know sounds like a lot, but they're so long that once you get them, you'll have so much to dive into, and that's a wonderful thing. And also, we really can't get started without addressing, I think, the single most important question we have tonight. It is a stuffed animal palooza. So can you tell us, you know, what fluffy friends are hanging out with us tonight, Shannon?
So, I mean, probably my readers recognize Ella, which is technically this is Ella number 2. I still have the original Ella that I based it off of, but I've had her since I was 4, and I have slept with her so many nights that she doesn't have stuffing in her head anymore, and she's not this bright of a blue. So I figured if I use that Ella, it would just kind of look sad and a little scary. But this is Ella, and then this is something that when you read Stellarlune, this little elf, like that is something written into the books. I won't say more about it because it's, you know, I don't want to spoil anything, and then I actually found this yesterday at the Portland airport, and it is a little blue elephant finger puppet, and it just reminded me so much of Ella that I was like it's destiny for the stuffed animal party to have yet another Ella with us.
Portland's not one of the lost cities, so is it? Officially,
no.
It's not. No. So this is just
sadly
this
no.
is just coincidental.
It was very serendipitous, and so this little one, I may hit myself in the head with it at some point, but you know.
I have a blue, so not quite the same as yours. And then I stole this from my dog just because I thought everyone should have an Ella with them tonight. This is my dog's. If my dog sees it during, if I get mauled by a dog during, go on without me, but it's all over.
I'm kind of hoping that like we see suddenly this dog come out of nowhere and just like jump.
It would make for an event, wouldn't it?
It would. Well, thank you for playing along and bringing your stuffed animal buddies. And
I want to be part of it. This is exciting. Now the stuffed animals though that are part of the story as well, so that you have, you know, given the characters their own stuffed animals, and I'm wondering why you decided to make that a component of the book. Where you mentioned just now that Ella is your Ella from 4 years old on, but tell us about that, how that came to be.
So it came about with Sophie specifically in the beginning. Like I didn't start giving the other characters stuffed animals until book 4. But really it came down to when I was writing the scene in book 1 where Sophie is saying goodbye to everything she loves and having to start over. I just kept thinking, okay, she's only going to get to take one backpack with her. And, you know, she's probably going to fill most of it with boring stuff like socks and clothes and stuff like that. So she's probably really only going to take like one special memento. So it's got to be something pretty special. And so I kept obsessing about it. Like, I don't know what to give her. What would mean something? And finally I asked myself, well, what would I have taken? And it was just like instantly, I would have to take Ella. And I thought about how much having Ella always helped me, like if I had nightmares or if I was having a bad day, like having something to hug, and it just made everything better. And so I put Ella into the books. And then in book 4, when some of the characters were going through really stressful things, then I, decided, hey, they need a snuggle buddy, I should say, snuggle buddy too. And so I started giving one by one. Fitz got Mr. Snuggles and Keith got Mrs. Stinkbottom. And, we went from there. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was book 3 that I brought in Mr. Snuggles. So yeah, and it's just kind of become a thing. I'm slowly working my way through the cast of kids and giving them each their own snuggle buddy when they need it. So here's hoping that eventually they all have one.
But I think that's such a great thing to have, in the sense that, first of all, it's something that's relatable to the reader, but also I think it kind of gives the reader permission. I'm a parent, and I know kids sometimes wrestle with is it okay that I still want to sleep with this? Is I still at different ages? I won't give specific ages for my kids, but they last a long time, and it kind of gives the reader the nod that you're not the only one. Even these awesome, amazing characters feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, here's a bit of. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and what's been so cool is I get letters from kids all over the world telling me about their special stuffed animal that they sleep with. And I'm just like, I have the coolest job ever. So
it is definitely a cool job. And, a little known fact, this is keeper trivia that I bet no one knows because it only matters to me. But we both had our first books came out on the very same day. So right. Dead City came out the same day the first Keeper lost. Now I'm all getting flustered talking about it. Your first book came out, and what it's been amazing to me, because I have now finished 2 series, gotten 4 books into a 3rd series, and I'm starting a 4th series in that same 10-year span that we've both been writing. And you have spent that entire 10 years with this encyclopedia breadth of characters and locations. What's it like spending a decade with all these people, these characters?
It's bizarre and amazing all at the same time. For me, it's actually been even longer because I came up with the idea for this story back in 2008. So it's like 14 years for me with all of these characters. And then, the first book came out in 2012. That's right. I forgot that Dead City came out the same day.
Yeah.
For those who haven't read it yet, it's so good. I love that. I love all of James's books, but yeah, I'm gonna gush about you occasionally throughout this. It's gonna happen. So just, brace yourself for it. But yeah.
You probably don't remember this. I barely remember this. So I may be getting it wrong. I'm probably gonna make myself sound better than I really was. But I wrote you either a Facebook message or an email at like midnight, because I woke up, I was so excited that day, and I said, Shannon, don't ever forget how great this is, no matter where things go from here, that an idea that you had is today a book.
Yeah,
I had no idea that 10 years later we'd be talking to in front of 1,000 people who are can't wait to get your next book. But I'm also not surprised by that, and it's really been great. And it's, our editors were side by side in New York. So when I'd go in, I'd see your stuff in Lisa's room, and it's just been really, really fun to follow. So with that in mind, because our mindset back then was not, grand dreams or whatever, had you mapped out a 10-book, 11-book thing? Did you know where you were going? Or has this been a discovery for you along the way?
It's been both. I mean, I vividly remember from the very beginning talking with my agent when we were getting ready to shop the series, and she was trying to figure out if she should shop it as, there'll be a sequel or we'll do this as a trilogy or whatever. And I remember being like, honestly, I see this being like at least 10 books. And she was just like, well, that's great, Shannon. But publishing is a business and you are a debut author, and I don't mean to crush your dreams, but I don't think that any publisher is going to give you a 10-book deal right out the gate. Here you go. Here's your 10-book deal. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But yeah. So I was very lucky to even get a 3-book deal from the beginning. Right. And so for me, my approach kind of was, all right, I knew that for one thing, I was dealing with a story where rather than the problem stemming from a single villain, I was dealing with a story that was kind of stemming from the world. And so I spent a lot of time figuring out the world of my story and what is good about it and what is broken and why these rebellions exist and all of that. And so that's why I knew I was dealing with such a huge story, because it was such a fundamental problem that it wasn't something that it was like, oh yeah, Sophie and her crew can just 6 months and they'll fix everything, done, one book and we're good, you know? And so that has stayed consistent throughout the whole series because it has to. But I mean, you probably experienced this too, because we both went to USC. My professors were very big on making sure we understood that your first ideas are rarely your best ideas and that usually you want to push beyond those, because usually the first stuff you come up with is kind of the most predictable, the most obvious. And if you dig a little deeper, that's when you get those like, I didn't see that coming, whoa, kind of moments in your stories. And so I definitely wanted to leave room from the very beginning that if I had moments where I'm like, oh, this is such a better idea than what I was thinking was going to happen, that I could absolutely pivot and go with it instead of being stuck with, nope, this is what I planned all along. So I definitely left myself room. And then, of course, because of the fact that I started with a 3-book deal and then the series was not a runaway success, we kind of launched into the world very quietly. There was a long time where I really wasn't sure how many books I would get. Like we went to them right as I was kind of finishing up writing book 3. And I was like, do I have to write this as the end? And can I get some more books? And they said, well, we can give you 1. We can buy 1 more, but that's it. And then, you know, it was the same thing with book 5. And then after that, the series was starting to pick up some momentum. So then they kind of started leaving it more up to me. And I was just like, well, now I don't know, you know, now I want to make sure that this is, I'm really trying to let the short story shape the book. And so that's how many books are in the series, is based on what the story needs. And so I'm very lucky that I've ended up getting to this point where I get to tell the whole story. But yeah, it was an adventure getting here.
You know, I was my first deal was for 2 books, and I was at the end of book 2, and it was dud city, and no one was buying it, and, you know, whatever. And I remember I was talking to my agent. I'm like, do I need to wrap this up? Because I feel bad. There are kids out there who are reading this, and I don't want to just leave the characters hanging. So should I make it so that it could be the ending? And she said something great. She said, James, we don't make it easier for them not to do another book. And I'm like, oh, wait, okay. So I'll just, and luckily I got to finish that story and all. You mentioned USC. So Shannon and I both have the same degree from the same school, although I was decades before her there. But we both have screenwriting degrees from the USC Film School. And what you're talking about to me really taps into what our education was about, which is this concept of world building. And I'm wondering if that film writing background, if that sense of approaching things with the idea that hundreds of people are going to make this and deal with the look and the feeling, does that impact the way you write these books?
It does and it doesn't. Like, it's funny. In some ways, I feel like, yes, because we were taught to be so visual, because film is a visual medium. Like, I cannot write a scene until I can actually picture it. Like, I need to know exactly where they're standing, what they're wearing, everything that's going on, what time of day. Like, I need to be able to visualize it. Otherwise, I'm just staring at a blank screen. And I definitely think that I also rely very heavily on dialogue. And I feel like, again, that's kind of my screenwriting training, because screenplays are very dialogue heavy. But it's funny because I know another thing that they really drilled into us was, you know, you got to write with thinking like a producer in mind. Like, if you're a brand new screenwriter, you're not a fancy name, and you're trying to get Hollywood to buy your script. And the more expensive your movie seems, the harder it's going to be to sell that script. And so, like, think about it. Do you need 10 locations, or can you get away with 5? Do you need 50 actors, or can you get away with 10? You know, and really trying to be, cognizant of these limitations that film often has. And so in some ways, when I sat down to write a book, it was like, I can do whatever I want now.
So
like, if I'm
liberating.
going to create an entire city just for one scene, which is a producer's nightmare, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, like any script that's like, let's build an entire city. Oh, we're only going to use it for one scene. That producer is like,
you're using it for the whole movie. They hate you. Right. No,
yeah.
Now so I did TV producing for a while, and I still write that way. So I'm in the middle of City Spies 5 writing it right now. And literally tomorrow, I am getting a behind the scenes tour at the International Spy Museum in DC, because I'm going to write a chapter there, and I want to go scout the location to see. I asked myself, well, where would I put the actors if I was doing it? And I should do the same thing with, because I don't have to worry about the budget. I don't have to worry about, well, how expensive is it to rent the facility? And I go, so I still have some of that in my process too. All right,
Yeah, it's
now
freeing in some ways. Yeah.
these people with all the hearts on the side there, they want to know about Stellarlune. They want to know, it's got to be surprises. You always have surprises. What can you tell us about the book? Can you tell us anything about, look at the hearts. The hearts are going crazy. They want to know.
So
It's
many
like
hearts. It's funny. Like, it's really hard to talk about the books without spoilers. And I certainly don't want to ruin anything for anyone who hasn't read. I will say that obviously I ended Unlocked on a cliffhanger. So, it's pretty easy to predict where this book starts, because, we kind of have to start at a very specific point where Sophie is dealing with the fact that, someone that she cares about a lot has kind of had to leave. And then also the fact that she has done something very dramatic and is kind of not sure what's going to happen now as a result of it. And so we kind of come into the story there, and Sophie is kind of trying to figure out what the best course of action is. And eventually she realizes she should really be focusing on Stellarlune, which is something that it's been mentioned in the series before, but we know it's connected to the villains, but we don't really know more than that, other than that it obviously has something to do with Keith. And so Sophie kind of realizes, I need to look into this. I need to start finding out what this is. And what's so fun about this book is that Stellarlune leads her to one of the secrets that I have been keeping for this entire series. Like, since 2008, I have been planning one of the big plot twists that happens in this book and waiting for the right moment to write it in. I actually tried at one point to work it into an earlier book, and it was just like, nope, we're not ready for this yet. Like, we need a few more pieces in place before we go here. So it was very surreal to finally get that moment in. And then the only other thing I can really tell you is that since this is not the last book, you guys should know this by now, but I have a feeling all the hearts are going to disappear when I say brace for another cliffhanger, because Stellarlune definitely.
Oh, a lot of faces coming up there. They're not happy with that. It's funny. I have a huge reveal in the book, the City Spies book that comes out in February. And I remember when I told my wife, we were driving across North Carolina, and I said, "This is what I'm going to do," and she got all excited. Then I called and told my editor, but no one else knows. And so I'm so excited that in February people are going to find this thing that I've known for a while. Yeah, it's there's nothing like it. Now when we saw each other last in Orlando, like I said, I think you had just finished, or you were just finishing Unlocked.
I was,
and that had been a very different book. The structure was different in what you were doing. That's why it's an 8.5 instead of a 9. So I'm wondering, in addition to the book being different, was the process of writing Stellarlune different as well?
Yeah, Stellarlune was incredibly different, because what I started to realize was that, I'm reaching the end of the series. This is, again, not the last book, but, we're winding down, and at that point, I feel like my job as an author becomes different. For the first part of the story, as I'm sort of on this arc, I keep raising questions. I keep adding mysteries. I keep bringing new things into the world. Now that I'm kind of on the other side of that arc, it's time for me to start answering questions. And it's a lot more to keep track of. It's a lot more of making sure that we're leading toward an ending where everyone is going to feel like, yep, we're happy with what we feel like we got our questions answered. We feel satisfied. We feel good. And so I realized that I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never written a 10-book series before.
I've not in fact.
So I was just like,
but my editor's on, so I want to say I'm willing. I'm very willing. Keep going.
I was like, I need help. And so fortunately, Simon & Schuster was amazing. And they said, we can get you help. And so my editor and my assistant editor, we did Zooms like every week. And we built, because they were like, maybe you should outline, because I'm not an outliner. I have never been an outliner. I feel like outlines for me are the quickest way to suck all the life out of the story. And they were just like, but Shannon, an outline would be so helpful as you're in these final books. And so my editor stepped up and said, I know how to outline. I will help you outline this in a way where it will still leave you room to keep all the life in the story. And so we spent about 3 to 4 months just meeting every week and brainstorming and figuring out like what things made sense to have in this book, things made sense to save for the next book, and really kind of making sure that we, troubleshot any plot holes that we were running through. And then even when I started writing, we kept that weekly Zoom chat, and it would just be like, okay, here's the problems that I'm running into. Here are the things that I'm feeling like the scene doesn't have enough life to it or whatever. And they would, we would troubleshoot in that Zoom chat. And so I'm amazed that they didn't get sick of me, because those chats would be like 3 hours every week. But it was so much fun. And it was so great to have some other brains in the project besides just me, because it's I don't know if you've noticed, but it's kind of thick books and it's kind of a lot of story, and it's just like, wow. And then I was mom's sleep deprived brain on top of everything else. And so it was just like, help would be nice. Help would be very nice.
and it's great that you asked. It's great that you took it, because some writers don't. We all need it. I rely on my editor to a really unhealthy level. I think sometimes my wife will look over, like on a Sunday night, we're eating and I'm texting something. She goes, "Tell me you're not texting her. Let her have some time off." And I'm like, but I don't send emails on the weekend. I just send texts. That's worse. So, all right. So here's the big question. And these hearts have been so nice. I'm worried we're going to lose some hearts on this next one. Is book 10 going to be the end? Is the next one after Stellarlune going to be the end? Or do you know? Or are you taking bribes?
So the funny thing is, like, we actually announced that book 10 was going to be the end. Like, I believe that was the title of the article that went out to the Associated Press, was like, one final of the Lost Cities book 10, when we did the contract. And we did that because we had created these kind of 2 outlines of like, okay, so this is what's going to happen in book 9, and then this is what's going to happen in book 10, and we're good. But as I've been writing, as I wrote book 9, there were a few things that it just, like, as much as we thought they were going to fit in the story, as soon as we started really trying to actually execute that and have it go, it just felt weird. It felt like Sophie and her friends would be focusing on something else right now because of all the big stakes that are happening and all of that. Like, they're not going to focus on this. So I'm not going to say 100% yet. It's still a little bit tentative on things. What I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the outline that we have of book 10 and trying to figure out, is there a way to just fit it all into book 10, or will that just leave us with a headache? Because the one thing I don't want to do is leave unanswered questions by the time we're at the end. And so
after 8,000 pages, you haven't answered all the questions.
I owe them answers, and I owe them good answers, not just, well, here, let me just dump some information into a chapter because I need to get it out there. So I have a feeling that I will probably be having to eat some crow and be like, just kidding. Remember when I said book 10 was the end? Well, maybe book 11. But again, it's all about making sure that the last book, we end on a high, and that everyone's like, best book ever. And if splitting book 10 into a book 10 and a book 11 is the best way to do that and make sure that we get all those answers in, then that's what we'll do. So I promise I will have like official news on that once I make my decision, whether it's, no, we got this, book 10 just needs to be book 10, or whether it's just kidding, there's going to be a book 11. So
what I'd like to do, we're going to do poll question in a minute, but if you're out there and you're watching and you want at least 11, hit the heart. Let's see hearts for 11. and if you think, I don't know. This is a lot. I think it takes a while to get in there. All right.
It's a mess.
All right. So now, all right. The
All right, now
question
I'm seeing all the hearts.
it takes the time. There's a little delay there.
It takes time to catch. Yep, it's pretty much solid red now.
Yeah. Okay. So it's now. Yeah, it matches your shirt and the cover. It's very stunning. Good color palette. The school would be happy with you there. I need to ask the famous Team Fitz, Team Keefe question. You know, I wasn't a journalism major, but I do know hard questions, and I have to ask them.
Yeah, this is the point when we're in like a live event that the audience gets so loud, I have to just kind of sit back for a minute,
Yeah.
you know, as they start
Imagine they're being loud.
But you know, it's funny. I work very hard to just stay Team Sophie. Like I really feel like I'm in charge of plot, but I am not in charge of the emotions of the characters. I really try to treat my characters like they're real people. And I really try to write the scenes just asking myself, okay, so given everything that I know about this character and everything that they're going through right now, what are they going to do? And so anything that's relationship driven is not something that I ever like pre-plan, because I feel like if I do that, it's going to be forced. I think we might have all read certain series where that final pairing just kind of feels not organic to the characters, more like, oh, well, this is what the author planned, and so this is where we are, and actually those two over there should have been together and not these ones. And so I'm trying very hard to avoid that. It's my naive hope also that by doing that, that whether it's a Team Fitzer or a Team Kiefer, or who knows, I mean, Sophie may be like, I'm sick of all of you. You know, they'll be like, that makes sense. That's true to Sophie, you know, and go with me there. So
I think, you know, a dear friend, Suzanne Collins is a dear friend of mine. We worked at Nickelodeon for years together. And so during the whole Hunger Games thing, and, you know, I talked to her one day, I go, Gail and Peter are fine. I go, I'm all about Finnick. And, you know, Finnick to me is far, you know, and granted, you know, he looks gorgeous and all like that, but I didn't know that at the time, you know. Part of me, you know, my Dex is my favorite. So I don't know if that makes me, if that's allowed or what, but that's someone who I relate with. So if there's to be a Team Dex, then I'm that. I don't know if that's allowed.
You know, there was a very strong Team Dex until around book 5, and then Team Dex kind of.
I know, I understand. I'm just saying in general. I'm not talking about end result relationship. I'm just talking about if I had to wear a jersey, you know,
Team Dex.
I can relate to him better. All right, enough putting you on the hard questions. Okay. We got writers out there. We have aspiring writers out there. We have avid readers for sure. What's some writing advice you can share? Because obviously you know how to do it. So give a little bit of your magic.
Sort of, and brace yourself, because I'm going to throw this question right back at you too. So you're welcome to start thinking of your answer as well. So for me, the advice that I've been giving this time around, I feel like one of the biggest things I struggled with was voice. You hear all of this talk about how writers need to find their own voice, which is sort of the way that you tell stories. But at the same time, nobody can tell you how to do it. They're like, oh, well, you just have to find your voice. And it's like, great, but how do I do that? You know, for me, strangely, I found it by reading the books that I wasn't enjoying as much. You know, like I kind of went to the children's section and I bought this.
So that's why you read mine. That's why you read my book.
No, not true. But I went to the children's section and I bought this giant stack of books, and I started to notice that some of them I enjoyed way more than others. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with these books that I'm not enjoying as much. I mean, they were published, they sell well, they're beautiful books. Like, it's not them, it's me. And so I would read it with that in mind. I would ask myself, so what is making me not enjoy this? What is making me want to put it down and move on to the next book in the page, you know, in the stack? And that would help me start realizing, oh, you know, it doesn't have enough humor in it, or it doesn't have a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of description, or things like that. And then I would ask myself, so if I were to write this scene, like, what would I do? And all of that kind of helped me start figuring out, okay, so my style of writing, like, I like a lot of humor. I'm going to have a lot of dialogue. I'm going to break my description up so that it's not these big blocks of description. And it really kind of helped me find my voice. And so I always tell kids, you know, you writers are readers, so you should be reading as widely as possible. But if you stumble across a book that you're just not connecting with, that might be one to pay extra attention to, because it might help you figure out like what your style of writing is, even more so than reading something that you love. Because when I read something that I love, I can read stuff that it's like, I would never in a million years be able to write this, but I love it, you know, whereas when I was reading something that I didn't love, it would be like, okay, well, how would I make this mine? You know, how would I?
And the magic of something that you love so much, the magic of it covers all the seams and hides the craft, and it's just beautiful. And so then how can I do that? Because it's just beautiful, you know,
Right.
and it is, which when you see something that's, okay, why don't I like that better? Because it should be great. It's checked all these boxes that matter to me, but it doesn't. That's great advice.
And so now I'm throwing it back to you. What's your writing advice?
You know, voice is, I think, the singular most important part of this. And it's, you know, in here, it's been an interesting thing because you've written all these books with the voice of a main character. And I've written three series. And so I've had to find 3 different versions of my voice. And that's always the struggle for me, is the finding that first 4 chapters of the first book of a series to make the voice feel different, but still true to me. I read out loud a lot and listen to myself. So when I hear it, you kind of hear the falseness sometimes when it's wrong. I also do a thing where I will get 15 books that I love or just whatever, 15 books. And I will rapid fire read the first 2 or 3 pages of each, because I don't want to copy it, but I want to, oh, that's why that's right. And get excited, because sometimes when I'm starting something, I get so caught up in the minutia of, you know, it's a house, right? And you have to put in the drywall, you have to put in the plumbing, and you're worried about the banal, mundane stuff and not the gorgeous window or the way the light comes through. And you got to remind yourself. So that helps me remember a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I love that. And I love that your approach is almost in some ways kind of the opposite of what works for me. And I love that, because that's the other thing that I always like for aspiring writers to realize, is that when you hear writing advice, it may not work for you. You know, everyone has their own way to write a book. There's no one way to write a book. And it's so easy in the beginning to be like, oh, well, so-and-so does this, and they're a New York Times bestselling author, so I have to do it too. And oh, it's not working for me, I guess I'm not a very good writer. And it's like, no, it just means that doesn't work for you. And there are a million different ways to figure out how to write a book, you know? So
absolutely. It's absolutely the case. What are some of the, you talked about the books that you didn't like, you didn't give names, which was very polite of you. What are some books that you do love?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not just saying this, but I love James's books. The City Spies series is particularly fun. If you haven't picked that series up yet, it is amazing. But I mean, I loved Framed. I loved Dead City. I loved all his books. So he is a great place to start. I've also really been loving, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet, but B.B. Alston's Amari and the Night Brothers. Oh, it's so good. And the second one just came out, Amari and the Great Game. Oh, you're so smart that you have the books nearby. Yes. And then obviously I love Roshni Chokshi. I think I'm doing an event with her in a week, and I just adore her. And I love Arusha. It is just one of my favorite middle grade series. It's so much fun. And I love Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky and that whole series. I mean, I could go on and on. Any I'm missing that you want to give shout outs to?
Yeah, I'm going to give a couple here. Okay. You know, first of all, you mentioned Tristan. I'm doing an event with Kwame in a couple months, and I'm so excited. He's so great.
He's so much fun. I just adore him.
Christina Soon-Kornbot has such great books, and they're so diversely different here. You know, the Tryout is this graphic novel, and then this is this miraculous fantasy kind of thing. But we you know, we live in a golden age of middle grade fiction, I think. There are so many talented writers, so many great voices out there that really I'm just so excited for people that kids, young readers, don't have to be kids, to be honest, people can go, and there's just so much to choose from.
Yeah.
You know, we are supposed to get to questions. I had 2 more questions for you. I'm one, because they're going to kill me if I don't ask this. I don't need 1,000 people hunting me down. So film school, and then you decided, well, I'm not going to be a screenwriter. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this amazing series and then sell it to become a movie. So what's the latest on movie, not movie, going to happen? What's the deal?
I mean, as you know, Hollywood is one of those industries that is both very, very slow and also very much like you're not allowed to talk about anything that we're doing without getting into all kinds of trouble. So it's one of those things where there is stuff going on behind the scenes, but I would get in big trouble if I were to say too much more beyond that. But I will say, obviously, patience is key here because movies are a long game, or a TV series, whatever we end up landing on. Keeper is not a cheap, low budget, quick kind of thing. We're looking at a movie.
Producer brain is finally coming back to get you.
We're looking at a movie that would be hundreds of millions of dollars, and that is not something that happens super quick. It's something, but the good side of that coin is everyone who's on the team is really committed to trying to make sure that when we get there, that we end up with something that will make readers be like, yes, totally worth the wait, and not, oh. So
if you can't say anything, can you do charades? So it's most picture, 5 words. Can we? Is that allowed?
I don't want to face the wrath of Hollywood,
Okay,
I don't want to get in trouble. But I promise, as soon as I actually have something concrete that I'm allowed to share, I will be the most obnoxious person on social media, sharing it over and over and over again.
And I know that feeling, because there's stuff I'm allowed to talk about too. And even my own son overheard something, and he's like, "You didn't tell me that." It's like, because you're terrible at keeping secrets. I'm not. You can't know these things. At least your child is young enough that they don't have the reach of blowing things out. All right, we're getting to some questions from readers, from our guests today, but we're also, let's throw a poll up there, right? Do we have? Is it? I feel like I know how to do this, like I'm some TV host.
We're hoping the magic forces behind the Zoom are going to make these polls pop up.
Is there an elf somewhere that can put a poll up or something? So, look at that. Okay, interactive poll. All right. So while the people are going, we can talk through these.
Okay.
So science fiction or fantasy. You only get one choice, Shannon. I think I know what you pick based on what I see in the wall behind you, but
you'd think, it's funny though, because I've always said that Keeper of the Lost Cities is Lord of the Rings meets X-Men, because it's kind of both. It's fantasy, but instead of using magic, it is, kind of going the more Shannon science. Wow, it's really funny making that gesture when I have an elephant on my finger. So I wish I could pick both, but if I am only able to pick one, then I guess I have to go with fantasy. And I love that we have the blue elephants for the win. What would you pick, science fiction or fantasy?
I'm going science fiction. We did take all our classes in the George Lucas instructional building. So I do feel like some of that science fiction had to rub off. Although for me, actually, the answer is adventure, but that wasn't one of the options. Okay.
It was
Pet banshee or pet imp?
Ooh, that's tough. I think I'm going to go with pet imp, even though they are sort of famous for their very, very bad burps and farts and stuff. I have a cat that has pretty bad farts. So
I think that brings me to the imp too. I think, I can relate. I can relate to that. Okay. Gnomish vegetables or elven desserts. This is, if you pick different,
that's really tricky. I honestly, I mean, so, but the thing about the gnomish,
off the cool adjective, I'm saying desserts or vegetables, Shannon.
I know, right? Okay, but the thing you've got to remember is that the gnomish vegetables taste like pizza, but it's a vegetable, so, or they taste like, a cheeseburger or all of these things. And I've always said, like, that was one of the few things that I put into the books that's kind of like my wish fulfillment, because I would totally be a vegetarian, except that I just don't love vegetables enough for them to be all that I eat. So if there were vegetables that tasted like all of the things that I love, then I could finally be a vegetarian. And so I probably am going to go gnomish vegetables, but I mean, the elven desserts, I'm going desserts.
So we often are disagreeing here. This is troubling. Pyrokinetic or talentless?
Ooh, I mean, I think I'd want to be pyrokinetic, you get to control fire.
I'm really scared of, I guess I'm scared of fire, so controlling fire would be good. I think though talentless describes me more accurately, so I'm going to go with talentless there. And then our last one in there is sword or throwing star. I think you're going to say throwing star. I'm just throwing it out there, like a star.
I mean, I like the throwing stars, except I have a terrible aim, like terrible. And so I have a feeling if I used a throwing star, I would hurt somebody unintentionally. So I'm going to go sword because I feel like I'd have a better chance of, sticking it to what needs it. Yeah.
That's being a responsible citizen. I am also going to sword just because I think that motion, I think I would get the elbow problems with the throwing. I think that wouldn't be good.
Well, and you get to wear like band and have it on your hip, like you're all cool.
There's a cool factor that would be very nice.
You can maybe get one with a jeweled hilt, so it's got some sparkle and bling on there. I think it's good.
Are results going to be posted? I know we discussed this, and now I'm not sure what the final. So I don't know if results are posted or not.
Yeah,
but I'm going to keep asking questions, and if we get results, we get results, because
I
only have.
There we go. Look at that.
Oh, fantasy kill! Like me and 4 people picked science fiction. Desserts. I won the dessert battle. Well, yeah, talentless, of course. And throwing star edged out. This is like the election results, but so much more interesting. This is good. Okay, good participation there, people. All right, now some questions from some that were submitted. Can you tell us more about the Great Gulan incident? Did I say that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, the Great Gulan incident. Yeah, that's for those who somehow don't know. That's this thing that like keeps getting mentioned throughout the course of the series, like that there was this Great Gulan incident at Foxfire before Sophie got there, and Keith, of course, says he had nothing to do with it, and I keep not actually mentioning what it is. And the answer is that yes, I am someday going to tell you the story of this. The only thing is, it's probably not ever going to be in the actual books.
It's not going to be today, right?
Well, it's one of those things where, I mean, this, like if I were to write the scene now after 9 books, well, technically 10 because of 8.5, but all of the 8,000 pages of teasing the Great Gulan incident, when I go to actually write that scene, it would basically go something like, "Hey, Sophie says, someone finally tell me what the Great Gulan incident is." And someone will step in and say, "It's this." And then you'd get like 2 paragraphs of like what the Great Gulan incident is. And then Sophie would be like, "Cool." It's like, that's it. That's all it would be. Because otherwise everything is just backstory. It's info dump. It's not, it's the past. And so it wouldn't live up to the hype.
We can't do a flashback and just live through it, or
see, that's the thing. So what I have done is I've actually sold a short story collection of the World of the Lost Cities, and the big short story that we know for a fact that's going to be in there is the Great Gulan incident. We're still figuring out what else will be in there, but yeah. So someday you're going to get that. It's just that's going to come after the rest of the series is done. So someday you will get to know, but just patience.
But you haven't just been fooling us around with this, right? Okay.
Oh, I do know for sure.
a hallmark of all the books in the beginning has been art, and these amazing covers that just, how can you not want to know what's going on in there? How do you decide which scene in the book gets featured on the cover?
So I'm sure the answer I'm about to give is going to be very different than the answer that you would give if you were asked this question, because
I bet it would not be. We'll see.
Well, We'll see. My series is very weird in the sense that because they're so long, and I've always been, for the last like 7 books, super behind on my deadlines. We actually do the covers before the book is written. So what happens is marketing and my editor and everybody sort of has a meeting as far as like what things they would like to see on the cover and what kind of general feel they're looking for. And then I kind of propose scenes that I'm like, it has to be a scene that I'm absolutely sure is going to end up in the book, because wouldn't it be bad if we put the cover art and then that scene never existed? And, the thing that people don't realize is that covers are marketing, covers are branding. And so it's not just about finding a cool scene. It's about finding a scene that sort of captures the feel of that book so that readers know, what. And so with Stellarlune's cover, we knew that, this is getting pretty intense. So we wanted kind of a bold color scheme, and we wanted, a big moment in the book that would be something that would really for sure end up in the book. And then, one of the things that I proposed is we are always also talking about ways to set the covers apart from each other so that, each one stands on its own, so to speak. And I said, well, we've never had an all-girl cover before. So what if we did?
I like that. I especially like
that has, just the girl on it. And so it was so fun to get to have this amazing like girl power cover with Sophie, Morella, and Maruka just looking so strong and
I
amazing.
think they agree.
Powerful.
I think, judging by the hearts, I think they agree. Okay,
yeah.
Shannon, ask me the same question. Go ahead, ask me.
Okay, what is your process for covers?
Exact same way. The exact same thing happened with my books. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not the only one. I've been feeling for all these years, because I will say for those who don't know, usually the way that this process goes is that the author has turned in the manuscript like a year ahead of time, and the publisher spends a year going through the manuscript, looking at the scenes that already exist and going, which one of these do we think would be the best, and then sending the author some sketches versus, and there have been times where something in the scene looked cooler the way that the artist wanted to draw it than the way that I was describing it. And I was like, yeah, sure, we can change that. That looks much cooler than what I had in my head.
I've done that at least 3 times where I have changed the book to go with the cover. But to be honest, I love the illustrator, Yao does my book covers, and she's harder to get than I am. So when she's available, we get her. And I talk to my editor about, okay, this, or this. And then it's like, I just make sure that I include that background, like here's an example. I thought it was going to be the Forbidden City, but she did the Olympic Stadium in Beijing, and I loved it. It's like, okay, I can make that work. And this is the new one. And so the one thing I tell them is make sure if you're going to put the characters together, put these 3 together, because I know who's going to be paired in the different parts, and I don't want to change that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too. Like, if there are certain characters that we're aiming for to have on the scene, then we have to pick a scene where it makes sense that it would be those characters together, because otherwise trying to figure out how to get them together for that scene would just be like, I can't do this, so we have to pick authentically.
So this is maybe my favorite question I've ever had. So whoever out there wrote this question, I love this question. All right. Is there a reason Fitz Avery Vacker rhymes with Ritz Savory Cracker? Were you eating Ritz crackers while you created him? And please tell me yes. Please tell me yes.
It's funny. I get this question a lot. I get readers who make like Ritz cracker boxes with like, they put Fitz's face on it and stuff. I wish I could say that I realized that. For one thing, his name is officially Fitzroy. So for me, I thought of him as Fitzroy, not Fitz, for a long time. But no, I had no idea that Fitzbacker rhymed with Ritz cracker until readers started pointing it out. And I just think it's hilarious. And it's one of those.
I think it's hilarious too. And I think that's good of your character. I would have totally leaned in and said that's with the intention. I would have lied. I would have just said, no, that's absolutely it. I was eating a Ritz cracker. I actually had a club cracker, and then that didn't work. And so I went to Ritz, and that worked.
You know what else is really funny is that, so I have 2 characters who are twin brother and sister named Tam and Lynn. And I get asked a lot if I based that off of, I guess there's some old famous Scottish ballad called The Ballad of Tam Lynn. And I guess it even has something to do with someone who controls water, and Lynn is a hydrokinetic. And so they're just like, is that where you got those names? No, I had never heard of that Ballad of Tam Lynn until people started asking me about it. So it's just one of those weird coincidences in the world of Ritz cracker, and Tam Lynn, Tam and Lynn.
You just mentioned hydrokinetic, which, is not a word you hear a lot growing up. And so I'm wondering, where do you get this? Well, actually, not me. A reader is wondering, where do you come up with the names for places and magical elements like Stellarlune or hydrokinetic? We have only a few more minutes. Yes. I'm telling you so that they don't start sending me messages.
Yeah. The answer to this isn't as exciting as it sounds. I read a lot of dictionaries and thesauruses, or is it thesauri? I don't know. Something something that is full of words and kind of boring. And I spend a lot of time making lists of like words I like and then trying to figure out how to smash them together. So naming things is one of those tedious parts of my job. Usually everything just is listed in the first draft as like name TK, and then I'll sit down and spend like a week at the end just like naming stuff and just
I can't do that.
It's so
I have to know. The only things I name characters, I have a lot of characters and I travel all around the world. My tricks are if I'm going to go, say, to Egypt, like I did in this book that's coming out now, I look up the rosters of the men's and women's national football teams from Egypt, and I start stealing names from, and that starts there, and then I add other stuff. But all right.
Character names I have to know, and those I read a lot of baby name websites to make sure that the meaning matches. But like any world detail, like if I'm inventing a new food, if I'm inventing,
I don't do that though, so that's why I don't have that skill. I can't invent foods and gizmos and magic powers. Although a magic power that fought writer's block wouldn't be bad. That might, or nice. That expanded the day so we wouldn't be so pushed toward deadlines in our books.
Better.
This question cracks me up. How do elves manage living in different time zones? I have friends who live in different time zones, and we have to check constantly to know what time we're going to meet. How do they overcome this?
The funny thing
I've never heard that question, by the way, in all my book events.
I actually have before. The funny thing is I actually kind of address it in Stellarlune. So I'm not going to say too much because you'll kind of get your answer there. But I will just say, the elves, the lost cities, they're all on one time zone. Like they're powerful enough that it's lost cities time, and so they may be scattered, but they have their own time zone. So
okay, this is the last question. I can't believe we're to the end already. Although, like the books, maybe there'll be another one. This is supposed to. We have announced that this is the last question, but if it doesn't fit everything in, we may add another question after, because we've established that that's a thing that we do. When it does come time that you finish Keeper of the Lost Cities, what are you going to do next?
I don't fully know. I mean, I have this like notebook full of like shiny ideas, but I am so deep in the Keeper stories still that none of them have really been able to take up enough space in my brain. Because you know how all new ideas seem amazing? They seem perfect and brilliant.
Ideas
and
are great.
And like nothing will go wrong with them. You will be able to write that book in 3 minutes and it will be the best book you've ever written. And then when you really start to spend time with it, you realize, oh no, there's a lot of problems with this. And so I haven't really been able to give any of them the space to figure out like what the best, whether they're really the best idea or not. So I don't fully know. I have a few things in the works, and it'll be fun someday to get to that point and get to figure it out. But for right now, I'm just deep in Sophie's world. So.
And I lied before like you did. I'm going to add one more question. All right.
Okay.
So during this 10-year period that you've been writing these books, you've had a huge change in your life. You've become a mother.
Yes.
And becoming a mother, or becoming a father in my case, changes everything. How excited are you to know that one day after you finish this, because it'll be a while till the child is old enough to read this, that you're going to get to have your kid read these books that you've left? Because I think of the books that we write as being kind of like maps, like the maps to make it through emotional life. And now you got like atlases. They're not maps anymore. You got like these atlases. How excited are you that one day your kid or kids will read these?
I mean, I am super excited. I'm also cautiously excited because I'm kind of that realist mindset where I'm like, the reality is that probably my kid will be stubborn because I'm fairly stubborn and will be like, I'm not going to read those, Mom. Like, like every other book except mine, because I could just so see my kid doing that. But I will say because I actually dedicated Stellarlune to my son, and I totally, when I typed up that dedication, I got all emotional, and I still get emotional when I read the dedication, and I'm just like, whether he reads it or not, whether he appreciates it now or appreciates it later, like I hope that, at least he can see that his mom did, this thing and somehow managed to do this while he went into a sleep regression and refused to sleep at night and made my working life so much more complicated. So, appreciate it, kid. Are you listening? Just kidding.
Well, it's recorded, so you can watch later. You know, when I mentioned earlier, Christina Soon Tornbot, I was having pizza with her and her two daughters in Austin, Texas. And I asked them, you know, she just got 2 Caldicots last year. And I said, oh, what do you think about your mom's books? And oh, we don't read them.
Yeah.
You know?
I fully expect that that'll be my kid.
Stuart Gibbs is the only one I know whose kids actually read his books. All the other authors that I'm friends with, their kids have no interest in their books. Yeah. So, well, we have reached the end of our hour. It has been a delight. Thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you, Barnes & Noble. These books are going to be coming out and to you, and they're being sent to you. So most of all, you know, I want to end it by giving Shannon a chance to thank you all and to say anything, but just from me to you, Shannon, thank you for letting me be part of this tonight.
Oh, and thank you so much, James. This was just as fun as I knew it was going to be. And to all of you out there, I really appreciate it, especially since I know that I had to keep my tour shorter and closer to home this year because I have the 1.5-year-old who I can't be away from for too long. So I really appreciate, I wish I could have come and seen all of you in person, and hopefully I will get back to being able to travel a little bit more, but thank you for coming and hanging out with me online. I hope you all had fun. I hope you love Stellarlune. I really, you know, poured my heart into every page, and I hope you can feel that. And thank you guys all for just everything you do. The fact that I get to have a book 9 in this series is because of you. So thank you so much, and happy reading. And thank you.
And once you finish it, you can think of, I just realized this, Keeper of the Lost City Spies. I mean, it's almost like it's a double header. So
I think we need to make that happen someday, James. I'm just saying.
Your movie and my movie can go after, and then we could do that.
Anyone from Simon and Schuster watching this is like equal parts ooh, and also like no.
No, they're saying no, not with us. But yeah, our Aladdin family just all cringed. All right. Thanks so much, Shannon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys. Bye.